Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. This is a workshop concerning our budget. Will you call the roll, please?
Bachman?
Here.
Henning?
Here.
Gorman?
Here.
Merkel?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Lieberman?
Here.
And Stevens.
Here. Mr. Schweitzer?
Evening. Let's see if this is working. There we go. All right, well, it's that time of year again. So what we'll start out doing is looking at the past couple of years and where we're at through October of this year as far as revenue expenses by fund. Just looking at the general fund. These expenses are actual numbers, and they do include transfers. So you can see on the general fund side, the personnel costs are pretty level. Operations have some kind of a, influx or exceeds in 2021, a little out of where we're at. And then, like I said, 2022 is only through October. So nothing outstanding in the general fund that we've done anything extra with. We did utilize some funds last year for some of the land purchases on Main Street, a little bit there, and as well as on in the TIF fund we have down there. So that skewed it a little bit last year, but nothing out of the ordinary. Looking at the police, on the personnel services, you'll see 2021 we had a little bit of a spike.
Kevin, it's
Yeah.
personal services personnel.
Yeah, it's payroll, fringe benefits, yeah. So, so it was, 2021 was a little higher than usual. This year, through 10/31, will be probably closer to 2021. We did have 2 retirements this year in the police department. 2 Hamlin brothers decided to quit, and one of them came back, though, so. So we did pay out their leaves, balances, and such. On the operating expenses, our total kind of reflects what we're seeing with the payroll, where 2021 is higher than the other 2 years. The police have been pretty level on their expenses, nothing too much. I know last year in 2021, we did have the body cameras, which was a significant cost that was purchased out of their fund. On the fire department, with the fire department, it includes the fire fund as well as the EMS fund. We combine those two. Their payroll is usually split 50-50. Neither fund is enough to support the total operation, so we kind of split up where we can. And so you can see, again, last year we had an increase. We had 3 lieutenants that came on due to the agreement with the collaborative. So those were new positions that we had. They were filled with current personnel, but it was a different job and pay grade. And so the total expenses go along just kind of reflecting the payroll. So we are a little bit higher this year through October with expenses. When we get to the service department, you're going to see the same thing with the diesel fuel, that the apparatus utilizes is, was not any, we tried to budget high and it even went higher. We're seeing everything cost more this year. So we've had to do less because of the prices, or we have purchase orders opens that are reflected in here, but we haven't received items because supply issues, we're still waiting. So that's reflected in the.
I thought the sharing was supposed to save big dollars.
It will. And I think the biggest sharing is going to come with when we have to go to replace equipment. I think that's going to be the biggest.
Yeah, so when we talked about this in the collaborative, actually, you do save money. We've saved close to $130,000 operationally with the collaborative, even this year. But your major money is going to come in the capital improvement side when we talked about it 2 or 3 years ago, when we talked about that $5 million worth of savings. So next year, you're going to see something in the budget that shows savings. We're due to replace a fire engine next year if we were not a collaborative. We're due to replace a medic next year if we were not a collaborative. So there's $1 million actually you're going to save. We'll actually make a note of that in our budget next year for his presentation, that we would have spent $1 million this year, but because of collaborative, we do not need to spend that $1 million.
But it's higher.
Well,
The savings are gonna come next year, is what you're saying.
yeah, and it's not really on operationally, because we didn't change how many people we have. We didn't change, the things that we buy. That, as far as daily supplies or monthly supplies, we still take just as many calls as we did when we were Clayton. Where the savings come in is in the capital side, because we duplicate so much apparatus. That was where our savings would come in. But again, we've saved $130,000 in overtime this year because we actually get a person from Englewood when our full-time people are off. We actually get a person, so we don't have to backfill them. So we don't lose staffing like we used to. When people would take off, we lowered our minimum staffing, so we didn't have enough people to do certain things. Now we don't have that issue, and Englewood actually supplies that individual.
Okay, moving to the service department. Amounts are a little lower, so you can see they were pretty close with payroll as well as the total. You're looking at 2020 at 1.6 million spent, 2021 1.5, and right now we're at 1.4. So they're pretty well steady with those. Like again, I know with the diesel prices, fuel, which then makes asphalt more expensive. We've had to kind of utilize what budget we have and cut back on doing some stuff. So that's going to be reflective in some of the road work we need to do next year. We saw it this year with the pickleball courts. We were going to do 4, but the cost came in, we did 3. So then at Meadowbrook, the personal services have been pretty consistent. This year we did add a banquet director, and we had some employees, part-time employees for the snack bar operations. So that did increase on that side. And then for total expenses, you'll see that through October this year, our expenses are higher. We did have some equipment and items we needed to.
Is that all because of Elaine paying her that much more?
Yeah, no, she spends it, but yeah.
Folks, I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. We had to get some equipment. Once Adrian left, we had some coolers that didn't work. We had to replace, and we had to buy a hot dog roller and certain things.
Did you say the pickleball courts are under services, not under Meadowbrook?
Those were pickleball courts came out of the ARPA monies, the American Rescue Plan. We use those. No, I was just talking about because asphalt. They paved it with asphalt, and that came in higher, so that's why we reduced the number of courts. Transfers. This is one of the biggest line items we have in the general fund. And showing you from 2020 and 2021 actuals to what we budgeted this year and what's budgeted for next year. You'll see that steady increase going up. I know this year we're not going to be utilizing the $60,000 we had budgeted for CIP. It's a small amount, but we're not going to be utilizing that. We're not spending all the what we budgeted, so we won't transfer that out of the general fund. Also, next year you'll see that the service department, their transfer went down considerably. This year we had in the budget was $650,000. We're trying to put back for our share for the Hope Road widening project. So I looked at some of the items we had in the service fund, which is the street department, the state highway fund, and a permissive motor vehicle license fund. And we looked at what we had in the CIP for next year, and we were able to put $325,000 in the CIP next year to add to our pool for the Hope Road widening. So we didn't have that much expense in the service department. And so we also reallocated some things where we could into the permissive motor vehicle license tax and state fund, so we didn't have to transfer as much from the general fund into the street fund. All the full-time employees in the service department are paid out of the street fund, but we do the part-time summer help out of the permissive motor vehicle to kind of spread that out as well. Our revenue trends, and this will include transfers for the police, fire, and service departments. You can see that there's no really big jumps in revenues for the police, fire, and service. Not much big jumps, just mostly the cost of living and the increases in just operational expenses with the transfers coming out. So that's where your revenues will increase with the transfers that they have gone up. We have seen have collected more than what we budgeted this year in income tax, so that's good. So we should hopefully, I didn't budget for next year with all the development. I did not anticipate how much construction crews are going to be adding to income tax. Want to be conservative there, so anything we get would, help us out and add to the general fund and the CIP, but kind of hard to figure out, especially with the development when they get started, and when I know a couple of them are already going, but I was trying to be conservative on the revenue side and did have a small increase on income taxes just from what we're seeing this year, and so there is an increase, but I didn't try to go all out and try to say, we've got all these people working in the city now, so. Comparing the revenues and expenses in the general fund, you can usually see that right now our revenues can't keep up with expenditures, and that expenditure amount is the transfers that we do to the other funds. And looking at transfers from 2020 to 2021, our transfers increased $700,000, and then to 2022 it increased another $560,000. And next year, we're looking at a $30,000 increase on top of transfers. Again, that's kind of down due to we had to transfer some monies over to the street department with that Coke Road widening match. So if our revenues are less than our expenses, that's not good. So and then, like I said, we're anticipating some increases in income tax, but local government fund, we get a small amount. It's only like $300,000, I believe, for $200,000 we're getting from that. It's not much. So, I mean, it's basically income tax. Property tax is we're maxed out on that. It's just a small amount too. It's about $350,000 we get from there. Moving to the capital improvement projects. Here you can see that our revenues are always in excess of expenditures, except for this year. But like I said, we are not going to utilize that $60,000 worth of transfers, so that the expenses are going to be down. So we are having a balance in there that carrying forward, we are able to, like I said, push off some of the expenses into there instead of taking care of them in the individual funds. So we'll be utilizing the carryover fund balances there. Just looking at next year's budget, what is budgeted in the CIP, we have, again, some monies in there for property acquisitions. If properties come open that are blighted and we want to purchase like we did on Main Street. There is $100,000 for Meadowbrook facilities improvements.
Can we get a list of like that?
Yeah, I can get you one.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
$50,000 for the golf course for improvements on the course itself.
But, okay, so you said on the general, you said 30,000. We're going to exceed our revenues by, was it only 30,000?
Transfers are increasing 30,000 from prior year.
Okay, thank you.
On the fire We do have a 5-year capital improvement project budget we try to follow. We go out 5 years and plan for it. Like Brian said, they had some apparatus that would be coming up due to replace. But next year, for the fire department, they're looking at just a new command vehicle for $60,000 and cardiac monitors for $35,000. The police department's looking at taser replacements of $20,000, one police cruiser at $50,000. We're going to put in electrical drops into the carport for the police vehicles. So instead of leaving them, when officers come in and they leave the cars running because if they turn it off, then the computers are on, drains the car battery. So instead of having to reboot the computer down and reboot it up, what they can do is if you have electric, you can plug it into a port on the side of the car. Then you can turn the car off. It'll generate electricity to run the computers. And also we'll do engine block heaters in the winter, keep the cars ready to go. And then when they go out and start the car, put it in gear, it pops that plug out. They don't have to pull the plug out. And then it goes. So it's going to save some on wear and tear on the engine hours as well as fuel. So he's budgeted $8,000 to have those installed into the building. And then when we start ordering new cruisers, we'll have those that apparatus put on those cruisers. They're requesting $15,000 for bullet-resistant portable shields. The ones we have now you don't have enough, and then they need $2,000 to replace 2 of the computers in the cruisers. And then we get to the big money grub of Randy in the CIP. We got our normal items we have every year of the trade-in for the John Deere zero turns we use that cut grass every day, all day during the summer of $9,000. There's $30,000 for Taywood Road project engineering, $50,000 for Talmadge Road paving. We have lease payments for the street sweeper we just purchased. Salem Crossing paving, $80,000. $30,000 for road striping, $9,000 to purchase road plates when we do work in the roads and there's holes to cover them. Paving Union Road from Englewood Corporation, limit to Salem Avenue of $200,000. And then we have 2 projects that we're getting grants for. Salem Street, which is $90,000 is our match, and then Phillipsburg Union Road, $220,000 is our match. They're asking for a new gator. They use this for spraying of weeds and chemicals. The one we have now it's on its 2nd engine and it's in bad shape. Looking for $120,000 for foundation and asphalt pad for our new salt barn. The original price was, I forget how much it was crazy, but Randy and Kenny have worked. They've got better prices on the concrete foundation. We found that cheap, worked with a local person that will unload them off of Englewood trucks on the haul them, so we went out and priced it out and have really knocked the price down, so they're asking for $120,000 for that. And then $25,000 for crack seal, and then $9,800 for our concrete asphalt breaker for the Bobcat to help with repairs. So like I said, I'll get you a listing of all the requested projects that they have.
And is there a chance any of those, is that all going to be a go, or?
No, that's why we wanted to have the conversation with you guys today. We did have conversations with departments and had them prioritize what they thought was most important, because there were other things on the list that they wanted. And these are the things that rose to the top that they said they needed for operations to continue.
And then, so Chief Garver, that $60,000 vehicle, is that probably a Tahoe?
Yeah.
That'd be 120.
Yeah. So currently, we have a Suburban that they use just because of the amount of equipment they carry. And when we bought that Suburban back in 2014, we spent $38,000. New Suburban prices right now are close to $80,000. So we looked at Tahoes because it's a step down. It's only $6,000 difference. And what you're seeing across, at least in fire departments, they're going to full-size trucks with caps on the back of it. So that's what we're going to do, and it actually saved us about $20,000 to $25,000. So it'd be like a Chevy Silverado 1500 four-door with a cap on the back. So
Yeah, I mean, I understand that it's necessary. I just didn't have anything, and I didn't know, it sounded higher than what the Ford Explorer would be, but then it sounded too cheap for a Tahoe, so that's why I asked.
well, and that's also upfitted. So when you're talking about lighting, talking about striping, you're talking about radios being installed, all that is going to be in that $60,000 range. The truck itself is right around 42 for the vehicle.
Cool, thank you.
You know, with all these projects, it is working within the revenue coming into the CIP fund. So there's no transfers needed from the general fund, so it is self-contained. Looking at police, again, not too much difference between, try to keep it close with revenues and expenditures. The revenues do include transfers, so I only transfer over, enough to make them in the positive and have enough money to start the next year. Actually, I got cited this year in the audit because I didn't expend all the transfers because you approved these transfers, and I didn't spend all the transfers. Like, yeah, so they're citing me for it. I'm like, that's ridiculous. If I don't need to use the money, I'm not going to transfer it. So I took that one. I'm like, whatever. So in the fire department, again, we're seeing about usually about a $300,000 to $500,000 difference between revenues and expenditures, just with personnel and operations. The service department, 2022 budgeted this year. Like I said, again, that looks kind of out of whack. Again, it's that matching we were trying to get for our Hoke Road, kind of skews it all, but most of the time you're looking at it's only a $100,000 to $200,000 difference between the two. So again, same thing, try to operate them just enough to get them through and get their bills and paid and carry over just a little bit for the start of the next year until they get next year's funding going. Then with Meadowbrook, being 2020 and 2021, not having the operations that we had this year with the snack bar and taking over the rental and everything, we did have quite a bit budgeted extra this year for kind of unknown how much we're going to spend in food and the beverages and alcohol, and we had to buy, like I said, equipment. So you're seeing quite a bit big variance there. And then next year, it's we do have a part-time position budgeted to assist the banquet director. So when she's not there, they're there. So Elaine doesn't have to work on Saturdays, and so there is, again, trying to still feel a full year then of what we're going to bring in on food and beverage. So looking at the general fund, we always pride myself, we budget, but we don't spend everything we budget. So we always have a worse outlook of what the general fund balance is going to be than until when we start the new year. Looking at 19, we had budgeted we were going to have $3 million. In actuality, we started with 4.6. 2020, we had a nice increase. Just jumping to 2022, we anticipated $1.76 million when we started the year out, actually with 3.3. Problem is if we look through the revenue expenditures for 2023, we're going to be looking at the end of 2023 at 1.9 million fund balance to end with. This year is not going to be that much variance between what we estimated and what the actual is due to the cost of everything. I'm been moving the budget around like crazy just because everything's costing so much. Covering, electric went up, gas, diesel, everything's costing more, so we're not going to have that much of a savings this year. And then if we go out one more year, if we use next year's budgeted revenue and expenses, at the end of 2024, we're looking at about $500,000 left in the general fund. So the time's come that we need to see, are we going to do property tax? Are we going to increase income tax? We're getting a lot of homes being built, but again, I know some of those we're only going to get 0.75%. We're not getting the full 1.5% because they work outside the city. If we had other businesses moving in, we'd be collecting the full income tax. So, looking at this, it's starting to get where we got to take a look and we got to act, because the general fund cannot keep sustaining the transfers to their funds just with the normal increases we have, plus with the economy the way it is, adding to it. So, I went back and looked. Our Caterpillar income tax, we still split that 50-50 with the schools. That's not over until 2034. It was a 25-year agreement. And then Caterpillar with their property taxes with the building will kick in 2025, but we're limited to the levies that we have and how much we can collect on those. So I guess we've come to a time that we need to figure out what our plans are going to be as far as on the revenue side of our budget. I did kind of throw some numbers together for property tax millages. And like I said, again, it's for property taxes, millages you need a lot of mills to get any money generated. Like 3.5 mills will get us $750,000. 5 mills would be like $1 million, and then 6.5 would be $1.4 million based on our assessed valuations now. I did talk with finance director over in Riverside. They were in the same boat as we were. They had a 1.5% income tax rate with a 50% credit. They went out and got it voted in at 2.5% at 100% credit. He says they have seen significant increases, but then again, I know they've got a little bit more of a retail and commercial base than we do. And so I know they have a lot of people that live close to the base, that work at the base, so they get the money from the base, because the base they don't charge income tax on the Air Force Base, but where you live at, they do, so they have those residents there they're collecting. So probably if we do go to increase the income tax, you're probably looking at having to get rid of this 50% credit, which kind of shoots ourselves in the foot. I don't know if the residents will be up for passing an increase and still keeping that 50% credit there. But that's something we need to, like I said, need to discuss and figure out what the plan is. So going to revenues, for 2023, currently they're budgeted at 12.5. Like I said, this number does not include transfers. We got almost 3 million budgeted for transfers. I do have an 11% increase, which is only $500,000 of income tax next year. And we did request $100,000 in permissive tax to help with some of the road work projects in the CIP for next year. Looking at the general fund, again, like I said, income tax is our biggest chunk, 68%. And the next property taxes is at 11%. Charges for services, which is the golf is in there, but then everything else just drops off. It's small. For the police, property taxes are at 42, and then the transfers in are at 46, so they're about even there. We do get about 11% between intergovernmental, which is with our SRO contract and security that we do for the schools. And you can see the fine and forfeitures are, we don't make a lot of money off speeding tickets.
So so next year, Meadowbrook is still poised to lose like 500,000.
It's a golf course in Ohio, so during when golf is being played down there, the course itself, it does show profit. But then you hit the winter months, we have the simulators down there, but it's still not, you're not getting to play that you are out on the course. Luckily, it's, we don't have as many expenses with the part-time personnel not working as much. But yeah, right now it's, unless we get, a bunch of rentals during the week or something to increase that. Looking at the fire department, again, property taxes and transfers are about equal at 37 and 38%. Charges for services, which are basically the EMS billings and some first aid classes, make up for 17%. And then we do get some intergovernmental monies. You do get some grants for EMS supplies and such. And on the service department, the gas tax and permissive motor vehicle license tax supplies them 62%, and then the rest are basically all coming from transfers from the general fund to support them. So on the expense side, it does include a 2% cost of living for staff. That is in the union contracts as well, is what was agreed upon. There are some, this year, the fire contract went into effect, so we have some more new incentives for them, as well as kind of matching what the police do on basically education and hours worked. And then we did increase the battalion chiefs up to the maximum, which we kind of do with any positions. After a certain while, they should be at the top, so that happened, will happen next year. And like I said before, we tried to shift expenses around so we don't have to do so many transfers. We had a thoroughfare study budgeted in the general fund. I did look at our agreement with the Clay Township JED, and we can utilize $50,000 there. We had budget for that to do this thoroughfare plan. It does help with economic development and planning, so we moved that to the JED fund. We looked at the fire department and the EMS funds and moved some of the expenses off the fire side into the EMS fund to lower that transfer to the fire department and fund. Again, spread out some of the items into the street fund into where we could into permissive motor vehicle license tax and in the state fund. If it was a State Route 40, 48, 49 program, we tried to apply it there, and did that with the SALT, kind of pushed more towards those other two funds than the street fund to help alleviate some of the costs there. So looking at the total budget, we did decrease it 2.2 million from this year. Like I said, we have 325,000 less next year for the Hoke Road widening match that we're budgeting. We did have the dump truck lease that we entered into this year was $800,000. That bumped up our expenses on that side. And then we did have the two retirements of the police departments that we paid out. We do have one payment payout next year for a police officer. He actually retired this year, but he didn't follow the policy that we had in place, so we hadn't budgeted for it, so he had to wait till we could budget for it. So he'll get it in January. So looking at expenses, this does not include the golf course. For the general fund, the biggest expense is the transfers out. And then the next one would be our payroll and fringe benefits, and then contractual services. And then you'll see the next couple, all of the expenses are basically our manpower for the police and fire and street. So you're seeing, the police have 77% of personnel is the cost there. Contractual services just with the operations is the next biggest. Fire department, you're looking at 94% of their expenses are personnel. And then with the Service department, 52%. We do have more for material and supplies because we do have the catch basins, the salt, the cold patch, all those gravel that we do, and then repairs and maintenance for the equipment is in there. And then on the golf side, this is the golf and banquet. You're looking at 57% for payroll and then 22% for contractual services. So just trying to break those down for next year's budget, comparing personnel cost. You can see most of the funds, it's small variances for the general fund and the admin side versus the Meadowbrook. The police actually went down due to those payouts that we had. Fire actually, it went up a little bit, but like I said, we had the new contracts in place. And then service is basically the same as last year's, 1.1%. And then on the operating side, general admin budget went down 157,000. Meadowbrook did increase. We kind of guessed this year, like I said, starting new, we have the increase in sales tax that we collect on, we have to pay for on the alcohol, the beer and wine. So we had some of that because we saw quite a bit of activity and actually in the pro shop when people come in to pay for green fees, they'll grab drinks. And so we've increased sales tax there. On the course, we are trying to repair, there's 3 wells on the course. We need to repair the pumps. So this year, with the lack of rain we had to actually utilize the City of Dayton water for the course, which was not cheap. So if we get these wells working with some new pumps, we can utilize those wells instead of the City of Dayton. So we're trying to, and we can use that, year after year then. And they also have some rocks that they want to put up on some of the creek beds and stuff to keep that from eroding away. So that was some of the increases on Meadowbrook. Police was a decrease, fire a small increase, and then service, like I said, that Hope Road kind of skewed everything for them for last year. So looking at the total budget for, should say 2023, but it's, so what we're looking at is for the general fund, we're looking at a total of $6.7 million worth of expenses. Again, we'll try not to expend everything. I'm going to be coming back in a later meeting to do some adjustments to our current budget, but I'm going to be moving our appropriations around to try to utilize up what we have, what we already budgeted. But there's some things I know we got a grant that we need to account for, and we had the fire trust, somebody's house caught on fire, and we got money from the insurance company and then paid it out, so we need to increase that. But we do go back and, if we have, property insurance came in lower than what we thought, then I'll utilize those appropriations to help cover other expenses that we need. So we do that every year. It's just a little tougher this year with, it's been a little frustrating on my end, just trying to, I know they get tired of hearing me, we got no money. So
Is the 119,000 variance for next year for Meadowbrook? I know you just said like the rocks and this and that. Do we have a priority list of things that could potentially not be done next year since they are in a $500,000 operating deficit?
Well, when we're talking about capital projects, it doesn't have an effect this year at least because there's no transfers to the capital budget. It's personnel is what we're looking at. Because the roof, all of that, actually the roof was one of the ARPA projects that we discussed with council. But the pump for the course, that's coming out of the capital budget. But like I said, there's no transfers to the capital budget. So even if we didn't do that next year, there'd be no effect on the general fund.
And we're going to have to, it would be wise to do that because Dayton water is obviously more expensive.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. In the long run, it should save us money.
I guess when we go to approve the budget, if we could see like a priority list, I think that would be kind of helpful.
Yeah, we can get that out to you tomorrow. I don't plan on presenting the budget to council until the second meeting in December, so you guys will have plenty of time.
Looking at the other funds we had, so we still have one thing that I do not see on here, I guess I got to add it, is the ARPA monies. We'll have those carried over, because right now we budgeted to spend all that, so it's a zero balance at the end of the year, but we're not spending all of it, so we'll have a carryover, and we do have those projects that you guys approved to do, so we will have that going forward. And you see here that debt service is at $847,000. We're still, when we do curb work, we're still sending those bills out, trying to collect from the residents then and pay for it up front instead of assessing the taxes and waiting 5 to 10 years to collect to help pay back those bonds that we issued. So, but everything else is, you look at the total budget is $17,900. It's what's proposed right now. And there is the transfers out to the police department will be 1.2 million. Fire department will be 892,000. Service department at 596, and then debt service of 517. So total almost 3 million transfers going out. So like I said, and kind of, like I said, looking down a year or two, it's not, not looking fun. So, so we got to do some work and figure out what we're going to do.
Kevin, I have just a couple questions. They're just general and they're really basic, so I'm asking, just kind of for a basic answer. So in the revenues, are grants, do you include grant money in the revenues?
If we know we have the grants already, I know we have some CDBG grants that are in there, but if we apply for those grants, I did not include those because we're not certain we're getting those. So I try to be, conservative on that side.
So in the past years, revenue numbers.
That's why I come back to you.
Grants grants are included
yep.
in with your bar graphs here.
Yeah, past years would be, so like this year when we got new grants, I'd come back to you and reappropriate those because I did not include those, so.
The other thing is, what do we do, what does our city do, or what does, I guess it would be CCA do, if residents don't pay their Clayton tax bill?
Well, we did enter into agreement with the Attorney General's this year, Attorney's Office. We have done one batch up to them, and we have seen collections coming in from that. People kind of, pay more attention to the AG send them a letter versus the city or CCA. We have got a lot of response out of that. I've been getting phone calls, and we have got payments. We've been getting almost probably about $3,000 a week since we did that in payments. The AG is pretty quick in turnaround and getting that to us. So that is one thing we've been doing. I know, in the past, me and Martina have worked and try to get people on a payment plan or try to get them. So hopefully people will take notice and pay. But they do.
My gut feeling says there's a lot of money there.
Right. Like I said, CCA does send out multiple notices. I had a lady this week said, the aid thing she got this time was the first time she's heard about it. And they're like, no, we got the dates. We sent you notices. I don't know if they just throw them away, ignore them or what, but so the money's out there. We'll continue to try to collect it. Like I said, if somebody's new to the city and they didn't know, that I got a date and address, I didn't know it was in Clayton, whatever, I'll work with them. We get the taxes paid, and I'll waive the penalty interest. I say, now going forward, if you're late or you have the late fees or anything like that, then that's on you. But, I don't try to collect as much as I can by gouging them with the penalty of interest, but, I work with them. But, like I said, this was the first batch we did with the AG's office, and it's starting to see results. That's good.
Well, the reason I asked that question is, and obviously I'm no attorney, but I know there's legal tools that other entities use, like an HOA. If people don't pay their HOA fees, there's things that you can do. If you don't pay your property taxes, there's things the county, can do to ensure that they recoup that money. And I don't know if there's a tool that we can use to ensure that we do that. Because, the thing is, if someone just doesn't pay, I guess I'd like to know, like, what the difference is. If we could, I don't know if we can even find this information out, but if we could, like, compare what would be 100% return compared to what we're getting, I bet you it's a lot of money that we're leaving on the table there. And is there a tool that we can use, or do we utilize that tool for this? I'm not about gouging people,
Yeah.
but
I do know
a
that-
tax is a tax,
Like CCA, I know they do get a W-2 file from the federal government that they can compare to what they've got filed to see if everyone that had income and that lived in Clayton did actually file a return, and that's when they start sending notices out. I know that, at the county, when they have property taxes, they actually, sell them to a collection agency, so they take cents on the dollar and then have them go collect, but they get something. I don't know if there's anything like that around, or I can,
Well, I think the steps that we took with entering into the contract with the AG's office was a big step towards better collection.
What the sheriff said, if you don't pay your taxes, your
Yeah.
property eventually will go to the
Yes,
sheriff.
your
Right.
property, yes.
Okay, so, and this last question, again, I'm just showing my ignorance here of your budget process, but, so, I get the rising expenses. We're in a bad economy, we're supposedly right now, and everything's going up and all that. But shouldn't our revenues, it also looked like there was a big difference in revenues. And that's why I asked the question about grants and things, because shouldn't our revenues be pretty steady? And if anything, shouldn't they be slightly increasing, with people building houses or new businesses, opening? Granted, we don't have a lot of that going on right now, but isn't that a good?
like I said, with the property tax, we're basically about maxed out on what we can collect. That's why we have the reduction factors that get applied to our property taxes, because when they pass those levies, they take it times the assessed value of the city times the millage, and that's the most you'll collect on that levy, and we've hit those levels. So property taxes aren't, we get, in theory, if we get more houses being built, it should lower the tax responsibility for other residents. So
All the evaluations go up last year, year before last.
yeah, they'll go up, but it's still, we still can't collect anymore. The evaluations will go up, but we're still maxed out on what we can collect based on those calculations.
But again, I'm just looking at,
Yeah.
these bar graphs, which I know, there's not any detail to them, which, I can appreciate that. But it looks like on the revenue, like the trends and things, it looks like the revenue trends, there's a lot of swing there, and I don't know what that would be, other than grants. Again, I'm not asking you to provide a bunch of detail, but it,
Yeah, like I said, I'm looking at, when I say,
I also don't want to put you on the spot, but it just seems to me that our revenues should be somewhat pretty stable.
what's the expenses, where's the revenue? Yeah, here it is. Looking at our income taxes, at 11% increases, it's only $500,000. So you would think, if we get, I was hoping to see, like I said, we have collected what we budgeted already, so we got another month coming. Because I was hoping to see, once we get a year into it, we can see, have people went to remote working, that we're going to start collecting more. This would be probably the first year we'd notice that, because with the laws that they had in place last year, and you still had to withhold where you were working at, even if you weren't there. So, hopefully we can see that after this year's over, look at the data and see if we did have increases because of that, and we can adjust that. And then with the new subdivisions going in, how much is that's going to bring us eventually when they're built out? And but it's like I said, most of it was not 0.75% is what we're collecting on most employees or most residents because they work elsewhere. So it's going to take a lot to see an increase. But like I said, I did not include the grants in next year's budget just because I don't know if we're getting those, and I don't want to count money we don't have, that we might not get. So as well as any increases from the construction crews and stuff with the subdivisions.
So
And any of the, I'm sorry, and any of those property taxes will be at least a year in arrears anyway.
Yeah, because the property taxes are collected a year in arrears.
So, if I recall, the police and fire levies each generate, is it about 1.2 million?
The police collect is about 1.2 million. The fire is a little less. The fire district's not the same as the police district. It's kind of weird. But between the fire has a levy and the EMS has a levy as well. So it's almost close, about $1 million, but the police are just a little bit above that.
So then the fire has, it's fire, they have one, and then EMS has a separate?
Mm-hmm.
So, we could maybe put something on to combine the two?
You could look at, those are all the levies we have now are permanent levies, so they're at that millage and then at that maximum we can collect. If you want to look at replacements, then what you do is, when you replace that levy, it picks up the new values, and you take that millage times the new values, so you will see an increase. And that raises it up to that maximum they can collect then. So a replacement would be a possibility.
And then that would help us stop to have to pick up the additional that we're
Correct.
funding the police and
Correct.
fire. And then another thing, I'm opposed to doing an income tax increase, honestly. I don't even think CCA is that great. I would explore doing a street levy over an income tax. At least then the
Yeah.
residents know.
Yeah,
what
the
they're
street
paying.
department has no property tax levy at all right now.
Yeah, so I would be more inclined to do that, so the residents know, this is going specifically for streets, so just my opinion.
Kevin, I anticipate from the remarks that you have given us that we're going to be having some type of a retreat of some nature in January.
Yes.
By that time, would it be possible for you to give us some estimates on, for example, the new developments that we have and what the anticipated revenue might be from those new developments, understanding they're nothing but estimates, and the length of time when we might actually realize those, and some of the things that Kenny's been talking about, so that we can take a look at this and try to figure out the best thing to do. This is something you've been talking about for years, so it's nothing new. We just have to figure it out and bite the bullet at
Yeah, I can work with
some point in
I'll work
time.
with the county to get, pretty accurate numbers and get that to you.
And then are police and fire, comfortable with current staffing for the new developments, or do you see, additional hires needed if everything comes to full fruition? Because I love what Dennis just said. If we're going to do that, I think we need to see a more holistic picture as to what they would potentially need if all these residents come in.
As far as the police side, we're going to need an increase in staffing.
One per shift, or?
I would say 1%. If you look at FBI standards, it's 1.9 officers for every 1,000 in population. We have 13,000 people. It's 24 officers. We have 18. So I'm not asking for 6, but I think 3 would probably, over time, would be enough.
Thank you.
So I'm not asking for an increase in number. Even when we put the new subdivisions and things and like that, and we look at workload and things like that, our current staffing as part as a collaborative can still handle that. Ours will always be, when we start running out of part-time people, what are we going to do to fill those spots, which we had transitioned to. If we can't fill them with part-time, we go to full-time. So our numbers aren't going to increase, but the kind of people we employ may have to change, which comes with an increased cost.
From part-time to full-time?
Yes.
Do you have any other questions?
Anything else for Kevin? Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for putting in the work on this, for you and the whole staff.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. This is like very in-depth and detailed. If we could just get that breakdown list, I'd appreciate it. And then, thank you, I will also would say thank you to all the staff for being understanding and not using all money that is assigned. I mean, I get it. I have 16 counties that I work with, and they are in the same boat too. County commissioners asking them not to spend everything. So we appreciate your extreme due diligence with the money.
Okay, so we'll take about a 2-minute break, then we'll be ready to start.